In 1982, Tron hit cinemas. Released by the Walt Disney Company, it came out at a time when Disney was trying to get a foothold in the box office domain, but would incidentally fail. Long before the modern years of Disney having huge successes with franchises such as Marvel, there was once a time when Disney movies weren't doing too good. Tron, however, for its time was a movie like no other, as we see a human go into a digital computer world. Although we are used to such scenarios now, what with the likes of the Matrix movies and more recently Black Mirror, for its time, Tron's themes of a virtual simulation world was quite innovative, delivering stylistic visuals that the likes had never been seen before. It was a response to the increasing use of computers and video games within society at that time, as viewers bear witness to Flynn, played by Jeff Bridges, an arcade enthusiast who gets sucked into a computer mainframe known as Encom. After Flynn believes that the company's vice president, Ed Dillinger, played by David Warner, has been plagiarizing his computer game ideas. And once in this digital reality, Flynn is forced to take part in deadly computer games. Although Tron wasn't very successful when it first came out, it has gone on to generate a huge, massive fan base. And of course, it has indeed become a cult classic. So today, we are going to try and learn more about Tron, and maybe even discover where it went wrong with its release, and why it resonates so much more with people now in 2019 than it did in 1982. And of course, we are going to do this by looking into 10 things that you may not know about Tron. So, let's check it out.
We have transport.
Number 10. Tron was inspired by a real-life video game. Naturally, in the early 80s, video games and arcades were a big deal, the popular craze at the time, so it should come as no surprise that Tron was inspired by a real video game. That video game, of course, being Pong. Tron was written and directed by Steven Lisberger, and he first started to conceive Tron all the way back in 1976. However, after viewing Pong on the Atari, the gears in his head really got turning and made him realise that a computer game world can be fully realised on the big screen. So yeah, this simple game of a ball bouncing from one side of the screen to the other would lead to the creation of the stunning and intriguing complex world of Tron. Number 9. The movie was originally going to be entirely animated. Lisberger took his idea to producer Donald Kushner, where the two set up an animation company in order to get to work on Tron. And the original idea behind the movie is that it was just going to be an animated movie. However, along the way it was decided to mix in animation with live-action footage, as well as live-action sequences at the start of the movie to set up the story. Personally, I think this is a good idea, as it shows the contrast and yet similarities between the two worlds. And by the time the Flynn character is taken into the computer world, you can feel that he is out of his element. In order to create the magical effects of Tron, early CGI was used, particularly with the cycles, along with filming the actors with a black screen behind them, so the computer world can be inserted in, a technique that would become popular with blue screen filming. The footage of real-life actors in the game world were filmed in black and white, and the vibrant colours of the costumes were added in by being painted in by animators. And Tron is probably the first movie to ever create virtual sets. Number 8. Tron was turned down by several studios. Tron was pitched to Warner Brothers, MGM and Columbia Pictures, none of whom were interested in distributing the movie. However, it was test footage which saved the day, as Disney Vice President Tom Willite was interested in Tron and saw potential and convinced the higher-ups in Disney to greenlight Tron. There was, however, some trepidation, as Disney weren't sold on the idea of giving a budget of over $10 million to a first-time director, filming special effects techniques and styles of which had never been done before. They didn't know if the effects could be achieved. So before everything was set in stone, Disney gave Lisberger the task of coming up with some test footage. to see if he was up for the challenge and to get a general idea of the look and feel of the movie. The footage showed that Lisberger could successfully combine live-action actors with animation, and Disney was sold on the idea and the movie was greenlit. Number 7. Disney animators boycotted Tron. Considering the Disney company is one of the world's greatest animators whom have been producing animation for decades, it would have seemed a given that the studio, well known for its animation, would jump at the chance to work on Tron and to create something new and exciting in the world of animation, right? Well, no, as the Disney animators apparently felt threatened by this new computer effects style of animation, and thus feared that they would be out of a job and didn't want to work on Tron. In fact, several Disney animators were enlisted to work on the film but just didn't turn up to the production, which led to the Wang Film Productions being used to work on the movie's animation. And it's quite rare to see an outside company working with Disney. That doesn't really happen very much. Number 6. Casting possibilities. Jeff Bridges plays the movie's main lead Flynn, and the movie came out when Bridges was at the height of his talents, and just a few years later he would go on to play Starman. Peter O'Toole was considered for the movie's main villain Dillinger, but after reading the script, O'Toole was much more interested in playing Tron rather than the villain. But it seems the production wanted a British guy for Tron's main antagonist, so David Warner was cast, who was just hot off the heels playing evil in Terry Gilliam's Time Bandits. Blondie singer Debbie Harry auditioned for the role of Laura, but didn't get the part. Poor Harry didn't have the best of luck in the early 80s when it came to movies, as 1 year earlier she provided a song for the Bond film For Your Eyes Only, which was also rejected. But she would, however, end up starring in a major role in David Cronenberg's Videodrome. Number 5. The music of Tron was composed by a Stanley Kubrick collaborator. The sound of Tron sounds both mystical and technical, with a great sense of adventure, which clashes fairy tale fantasy with the modern digital age. Surprisingly, Tron's score was provided by Wendy Carlos, who at the time was most well known for composing 2 Stanley Kubrick movies, those being A Clockwork Orange and The Shining. And the fact that she can compose these 3 movies while making them sound completely different from one another shows what a talented composer she is. However, these are the only films she worked on, but she has also released several albums in her time. Also, British rock group Supertramp were supposed to record 2 songs for Tron, however the band ended up leaving the project, and American rock band Journey were brought in instead, where they recorded the songs Separate Ways and Solutions. I'm trying to imagine what a song made for Tron by Supertramp would have sounded like. My guess is that it would have been pretty surreal. Number 4. Arcade game. So considering computer games and arcades are such a prominent part of Tron, it would have been ludicrous to not have some kind of video game tie-in. Which is where we get the Tron arcade game, which has gone on to become a fan favourite. Just like the movie it's based on, it's very colourful and vibrant and recreates many of the games and challenges seen in the movie. The part of the game that particularly stands out to me is the motorcycle game. It just looks great. The arcade game delivers fun gameplay where players have to solve puzzles and outwit the game itself in several challenges, with some of the imagery on screen even resembling circuit boards. My only regret is I don't really have any access to the Tron arcade game. Because you may find this hard to believe, but I actually really do like arcade games. Yeah, I know, big shock, right? Number 3. Tron's famous cameo. Yeah, that's right. A famous face turns up in Tron that was under your nose the whole time and you probably didn't even notice. The irony being the cameo wasn't played by a human, but it was in fact Pac-Man. Indeed, in Tron, Pac-Man himself turns up. Everyone's favourite yellow ball who has a love for eating dots was first released in 1980 as an arcade game, and by 1982 when Tron was released, Pac-Man was a huge international sensation, a modern relic of pop culture. So considering Tron is a movie about computers and video games, the video game star got to appear in the movie as he's displayed on a grid that the main villain is observing. It actually makes sense. If this computer world is built up of computer programming and data in one collective universe, it would have traces of existing computer data like Pac-Man. So maybe Pac-Man being there has a lot more deeper meaning than just being a mere cameo. Number 2. Tron's special effects were banned from the Academy Awards. Considering Tron uses absolutely stunning visuals and special effects, of which still look spectacular even today, it should have been an obvious candidate for a Best Special Effects nomination of the 1983 Academy Awards. However, despite being nominated for Best Costume Design and Best Sound, sadly all of the special effects efforts put into the movie was snubbed by the awards ceremony, as Tron was disqualified from being given a nomination, as using computers to create special effects was seen as cheating. Yes, despite the fact that computers would become a huge part of future special effects and lead to the creation of CGI, all of which were pioneered by Tron, Tron was banned from the Academy Awards. It just goes to show how ahead of its time Tron was, and introduced this new special effects technique, of which back then clearly people didn't want a bar of, despite the fact that it was the way of the future. Could this be because people are just naturally scared of the future and how things change? Who knows? E.T. ended up winning the award, and Poltergeist and Blade Runner were nominated. Oh, the irony how Tron was considered cheating by using computers to generate special effects, where nowadays pretty much all special effects are created by computers. Number 1. Tron never stood a chance in the box office. Supposedly, former Disney worker Don Bluth publicly stated that he had seen Tron before its release, and gave it a scathing review labeling Tron as stale. Tron was set to be released for Christmas 1982, but was then pushed forward to July, so Tron would compete against Bluth's own movie, Secret of NIMH, in an attempt to knock Secret of NIMH off the box office, as a way to sort of punish him and say, "There, who's laughing now?" However, once again, supposedly. This is all just rumour, so take it with a grain of salt. However, if the stories are true, then it was probably the worst thing that could have happened to Tron, as releasing Tron in July meant the movie was competing against not only Secret of NIMH, but also Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, Poltergeist, Blade